Hi, everyone. I'm Gayatri Sundar Rajan.
And I'm Trevor Melsheimer.
And we're two mechanical engineers from Boston University's College of Engineering. On behalf of our senior design team, we're going to be talking to you today about producing drinkable water from moisture and air. So 1 in 6 people in the world suffer from water scarcity. And existing solutions are energy intensive and expensive to implement. These solutions might look like large-scale desalination plants or might look like pipelines going from freshwater bodies to cities or communities. But our solution aims to produce potable water from moisture and air in a low-cost, low-energy, as well as culturally conscious method. And this is characterized for remote and arid environments. Specifically, our project is for Professor Greg Blonder in the Mechanical Engineering Department and with Professor Hauser, who's our advisor. And so our final deliverable is a proof of concept system that will be able to demonstrate these objectives and will be able to be scaled to a manufacturable product. And so the first question is, what is that target environment that we're building this system for? And that environment is for the Sahara Desert right now, which is an arid region with economic and physical water scarcity. What's really important to keep in mind is that our system, although it's built for these specific requirements, can actually work in other settings. The performance will just change a little bit. So when we look at the Sahara Desert, we can expect low humidities, we can expect low average rainfall, as well as very high amounts of sunshine. And so this is really critical for what energy sources we use later in the system.
So the first question, as a key component to our project, is how do we harvest water from air? So the way we do this is through a desiccant, which you are all actually familiar with. They're the silica gels that you find in your containers or the calcium chloride that you use to salt your streets. What we do is we put out calcium chloride or a like desiccant, and it absorbs water from the air, puddles into a solution of mixture of salt and water, and then we apply heat, and we can do a desorption. So we take the water out of that solution, and then we collect it as a vapor, either steam or just moisture in the air, and then we condense it into potable water through a traditional distillation process. System overview, those steps that I just described are here in the schematic. So in orange, you have where the desiccant would lie in trays. This system overall is representative of a solar oven. So we're using the sun to heat our system. And then the exposed surface there is actually the condensing surface that creates a temperature difference and allows the water to condense on the walls. Our design goals are to condense 1 liter of water. In order to do this, we need to reach temperatures of 300 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit in order to both desorb the water and regenerate the desiccant so that we can cycle it once per day. The water absorbed needs to be at 1.5 liters in order to account for any inefficiencies in our system.
And so the first step in our process is the absorption design. The question that we asked ourselves when designing the system is, how can we absorb water from air? So as we mentioned, we're going to be using a desiccant to actually capture that water. But something that's also important is the substrate, so that material that's actually going to be holding that desiccant and water solution. And so questions that we had to ask ourselves when selecting these two elements are, what's the rate of absorption that we expect? How quickly do we want this process to occur? How much area do we want to dedicate to absorption in our system? And what is the cost and availability of various desiccants and substrates, and can they be available all around the world and at a reasonable price? And so what we ended up with is choosing a mixture of calcium chloride and lithium chloride. And this is to balance that cost and availability, as well as the temperatures that we'd actually need to be able to separate that water from the system. And we also chose burlap as our substrate because it's available throughout the world, and it also has the property similar to microfiber cloth, where it's able to wick away water, and it's able to be sustained at even high temperatures, which is really good for our solar oven design.
To describe what this solar oven looks like, we have another schematic here of the sun concentrated through reflectors through a transparent window into a black box. As you guys all know, like black surfaces out in the sun tend to absorb heat, whereas reflective surfaces reflect sunlight. So we're concentrating sun into this box, and we're heating it up as an oven. This is a very hobbyist type project that's been done quite frequently, but we put in the desiccant inside this black box, and then we're able to do our whole distillation process inside there. So some of the design challenges for this process, angling the box so the sun moves during the day, obviously, and throughout the year it also moves with the horizon. And so angling the box is really important in order to get the optimal heating. Other factors include the heat loss, so making sure the system is insulated, both double pane windows, insulation in the walls, as well as the volume surface ratio. So scaling the project, one of our goals is to scale. What is the impact on heating? Can we characterize that? And then lastly, the temperature profile. So how long does it take to heat up this box? So what can we feasibly scale this box to in order to reach temperatures that we need in a given period of time during the day? Next, for the condensation, here in the orange, we have where the trays of desiccant solution would go, and in the blue, we have the condensation area. What we did was that we applied fins for control of heat loss, and we exposed it to the ambient environment. So we are both doing a solar oven as well as exposing it to heat loss on one wall in order to condense. As you might imagine, one of the main challenges here is avoiding excess heat loss. So we really don't want to reduce the performance of the oven such that we can't reach the temperatures that we want. That said, we need to condense on a surface in order to produce potable water.
So in our test design, in addition to each of the components that we're building, we need to be able to demonstrate whether our system works or not. And to do that, we need to measure certain parameters. So when characterizing this operating environment, we'll be measuring the temperature, the humidity, as well as the solar intensity, and we'll be able to calculate the water availability to be able to say that this system works this well based on these conditions. Something else we want to know is how much mass we've absorbed in the absorption phase and how much mass we've actually condensed at the end, how much we've lost in between, as well as how hot can our solar oven get throughout the day and in what conditions outside. So putting this together, we iterated onto our first prototype. And so this is actually demonstrating the solar oven design. So essentially, the desiccant would have been absorbed in an absorption setup, and then this is where it would be go to be heated up. You see on the outside, there's this cardboard box. That's that insulated piece that Trevor was talking about. Inside, you see a metal box, which is that black box. And then you see these external reflectors, which are guiding sunlight into that container. Something also you notice here is that there's a condenser tube. So this is actually interesting in terms of our engineering process. There's a lot of things that we learned during these prototypes. We had thought that this condenser tube was going to be the place where we're going to get all of this drinkable water at the end. But we realized that the water vapor wasn't really going there. And so that actually was one of the biggest changes that we made when we were actually going into our condensation system. So in our second prototype, in addition to scaling our system so that it actually can produce 1 liter of water, we've actually taken a lot of the learnings that we've gained from our first prototype and implemented it into that system. And so that's something that we're going to be testing in the coming week to be able to determine whether we can reach those 300 to 400 degree Fahrenheit temperatures that we mentioned in the beginning, and whether we can go through this full process and really produce that 1 liter of water at the end. So we are in that last stage right now, and we'd be happy to talk to you about the results after this presentation, or even at the end of this week during our mechanical engineering presentation. So thank you so much.
Hi, great presentation. I was wondering if there's a purification process involved as you kind of envision this going forward, and how that might kind of add on to some of the challenges you foresee in this being like something really workable in the real world.
Yeah. So in the final version of this distillation process, where the water is taken from the solution into condensation surface and into like a collection trough, that would ideally be the purification system. And so solar stills will do this, and they'll have like a pond of dirty water, and then it'll naturally like condense, and then you'll have a cup of water that you can drink. So there would be no like distillation process or purification process outside of that, but maybe not for this one, which is like our final prototype is maybe has components that we don't want to drink. Yeah.
I probably missed this. So when you went to your second prototype and got rid of the condenser tube, where is the water being collected now?
Yeah. Do you want to take that?
Sure. So the water is actually now being collected inside the black box. And so the water is being condensed on one wall of the black box that is exposed to the ambient environment. Before we had a tube that actually exited the box and came back in. The idea was that the air would just travel where we wanted it to, but that was much harder than we expected.
I also may have missed this, but why did you guys choose 80% calcium chloride and 20% lithium chloride?
Yeah. So the reason we chose that is that calcium chloride is actually much, much cheaper than lithium chloride, but its performance is actually kind of limited to about like 50 to 40% relative humidity. You really see that it's not absorbing as much at the lower humidities, whereas lithium chloride is great for those lower humidities, but is about 10 times more expensive. And so what we did was we used a blend of that, both because of the limitations of our own budget, but also to say that at the end of the day, depending on what you are valuing, whether it's the cost of the system or the performance, you could actually use different blends and use the same system to produce water at the end.
Any other questions? If not, please join me in thanking our speakers again for a great talk.